There's a valley between where you stand in your convictions today, strong, untouchable, unmovable, and unshakable, and the compromise that you'll never be caught dead in a million years having. That compromise, there's a valley between where you stand right now and you ending up right there. And that valley is decorated with a series of realistic and small and tiny everyday events and happenings in life that make your most biblical and strong conviction irrational, and most compromising and conforming decision reasonable and doable. In Genesis, we read about a character named Lot. His name simply translates to Abraham's nephew. Although associated by blood, Lot would find himself far removed from Abram's identity or his flock. Lot's life provides evidence of just how far into abomination a saved man's life can really go. Genesis 12, Abram is called by God to go into a certain land where he is told him to go. Genesis 13, Abram and Lot must separate because their flocks are massive, they're huge, and they're in contention one with another. And so Abram gives Lot the decision, wherever you choose to go, I'll go somewhere else. And Lot chooses to go to the land of Jordan as he sees it's wonderfully watered, and he decides to pitch his tent towards Sodom. But there's only one problem. The men of Sodom were sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And this is what he pitched his tent toward. Just imagine every time you move the curtains out of the way and look out the window to see that beautiful sunrise, you'd also have to lay your eyes on your next door neighbor sinning against God. His theft, his murder, his uncleanness, his fornication, his idol worship, all before your bagel even pops out of the toaster in the morning. 2 Peter says this about Sodom and Gomorrah. God, turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample unto those that after should live ungodly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Now you might think, yeah, the devil's got some great convoluted, well thought out strategy, and sure, maybe he does. But you'd be amazed how much more reasonable that sin seems when you've seen it the fourth time this week. You'd be amazed how much more live that party seems when it's next door rather than 2 streets down the block. You'd be amazed how much more likely you are to get drunk when your friends are doing it than when strangers you don't know are doing it. You see, sin always makes more sense when it's more close to home. The strange woman seems a lot more reasonable to fall into the pit of when she's your next door neighbor. The false goddess is a lot easier to erect and set up and start worshiping once you realize the social injustices that she has come to abolish by her power. Those other gods, they're a lot easier to worship once you understand their folklore. The Egyptian gods are a lot easier to exalt once you realize how much they identify with you as a black man or a black woman. You see, while his tent could have given him a wonderful view of the works of God, instead it gave him the sinful view of the works of man. Instead of taking time to identify with who God is, he set up his tent to identify more with who the world was. At this stage in Genesis, we see 2 distinct roads. While Abraham grew in his fellowship with God, Lot grew in his fellowship with the rest of the world. It is at this stage that Abraham begins pleading for the mercy of Sodom and Gomorrah, and those 10 which God would spare Sodom and Gomorrah for are Lot's very family. We understand by Genesis 19 that Sodom and Gomorrah was a homosexual nation as well. As angels came to warn Lot of the judgment of God upon Sodom and Gomorrah and to flee, the men of Sodom and Gomorrah came to know those angels, that is, to sleep with them and know them carnally. Lot would rather have sacrificed his own daughters than to allow those angels to be taken advantage of. Now, Lot would ultimately go and warn his family of the judgment to come and to escape and to flee, but it almost seemed as though he were mocking them, because he had spent so much time identifying with the wicked that when it was time to use his influence as a righteous man of God, nobody took him seriously because of his testimony. Now, the judgment of God was going to come whether Lot had good influence and a good testimony or not. As promised, God brought flaming fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah and burnt up all of the works therein. Their home was being turned to a fiery pile of smoke. Lot's wife turned around and was turned to a pillar of salt. Jesus said, "Remember Lot's wife. Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it. Whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it." When Jesus delivers you out of the judgment of God, don't look back to see how much of the world you can bring with you to God's promises. Instead, seek to follow Christ. Instead of living within reasonable compromise, make one righteous decision at a time.